Thank you for watching the World Community Magazine's Hour of Power Live on Facebook with your hosts Edward McQueen and April Garner.
And we are live today. Good evening. I'm your host, Ed McQueen, and my sister April's in the background today, but doing a successful job. A fantastic job. We're still dwelling on Black History Month, or we're going to call it Super Black History Month, because all the other months, the 11 months, it's not just, but it's Black History Month. Okay. These are Black History Months, plural. So look, I'm glad you all could view in and join us today for this continuation of our Black history. Last week was so compelling, and I think we gave you not a preview, but we told you about who was going to be on this weekend, and we're going to try to fulfill that wish. As for lack of you all not viewing the screenwriters and the playwright of the people who of this successful play last week. So this week we want to bring the playwrights on, and we have one part of that group of the people who are writing the plays and everything. And that is Miss Cynthia of the group. I'm not getting embarrassed now, but it's the Black Pearl, which is coming to life on stage. And hey, let's get right to it. We're going to introduce to you Miss Cynthia Grace Robinson. And Cynthia, I apologize for kind of stumbling here. But that's because I guess I'm excited that you all are here, and unfortunately, Mr. Cezar Williams could not be here, who's your other half, but he came on strong last week verbally, and so did you. So this week we want to let people see what in true light what's going to take. To complete, and it is completed, but it's what it's going to take to fulfill the new production of the Black Pearl. It's a play that was in a reading week before last week, I believe, which I attended, and I was so thrilled by it that I'm just so glad that you all come back on. After having a conversation with you and Cezar in the hallway, my wife and I. Yeah. So welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we're happy to have you to tell us a bit more about it, about the play, and not just how it came about, but a description of the play. Now, if you allow me, I could read a description of the play, unless you want to do that yourself. Okay.
It's really up to you. I mean, the play is. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Yeah, the play is evolving. So if you want to read the description as it stands today, and then I can talk a little bit about where it's going and how it's evolving, we can talk about that.
Okay. Well, let me just start with, it starts with amid the majestic beauty of the ocean and the backdrop of a quaint historic seaside town, the love between young heirs is tested as they face their fears about class anxiety and ancestral history, and come to terms with maintaining the future of their family's legacy in the Pearl, the great Atlantic Beach, yes, South Carolina. Yes. So it's set in the socio-political climates of the 1950s and the present day. The story raises questions around generational wealth, spatial justice, and the meaning of success. I think your explanation, and when you start discussing with you, you're going to get into all that, I presume. And while facing the modern realities of gentrification and the price of progress, each character wrestles with the question, how do we honor our roots and traditions while embracing the future? Mm-hmm. This is written by, of course, you and directed by Cezar Williams. The Black Pearl recently had its reading at the Coastal Carolina University campus, and like I said, it was fantastic. And I'm still left in awe.
That's so great.
So we're anticipating a premiere. I don't know when it's going to be. Full production in an upcoming main stage season. So you can elaborate a little bit more on that also. But at the same time, since they didn't see you all last week, if you want to give propagate or convey a brief bio of yourself, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to speak about the Black Pearl, and I'm really excited to speak about it during Super Black History Month, one of the many months of Black history. I just want to say before we start that the play was commissioned by Coastal Carolina University, and it was made possible by the generous support of Nancy and Billy Cave. And that's important because it takes money to make theater.
Absolutely.
And to bring art to life. And so we want to make sure that people know that who supports theater.
Right.
Yeah, I've been writing plays. It was interesting because I just had my 19th anniversary since I've written my first play. I just know that because I wrote my first play and it was produced in 2024 or something like that. Not quite. 2023. Yeah. So it was like 19 years ago. And I never set out in the beginning to be a playwright. I'm actually a career educator. I've taught middle school, high school, college, always teaching English and drama and writing for many, 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 many years. So I've always been engaged with stories and writing, and I really enjoy helping other people learn how to write and feel comfortable in their writing voice. When I started writing plays, it was because I just loved theater so much. And I'd read like so many plays just from teaching, from my teaching career. And so I want to say that I was just blessed that when I started, my first play was produced. And that's very unusual because many people write plays and write screenplays and, they never see the light of day. And so that's really, really just something that humbles me always. In terms of the Black Pearl, it's very special to me because as an artist, being able to write something that means something to people is everything, right? I feel like the purpose of being an artist is to make people feel and care and engage and discuss and social change and all of those great things. And so this play, the fact that it hasn't even hit the stage yet and that it's already people starting to talk about it and care about it and are invested in it is just a tremendous gift. It's a tremendous gift. And so, as I said to you before, I feel like I'm being of service. This is a way that I can use my writing in service. And that is an incredible, incredible honor and feeling. As you said before, it felt like it was forever ago, but it was on February 2nd and 3rd, actually, is when we had this readings. Yeah. Yes. And what's interesting about that is, I live in New York, and so people attend a lot of readings of plays. And it's not easy to sit through a reading of a play because it's not like you have the sets and the lights and all of the things, all the pieces. And to have the support that we had in our 2 full houses, like when you were there, you saw that.
Absolutely.
And to have the reaction and to have people be so excited about the words and the actors is incredible. Yeah, that's incredible. And Cezar did a fantastic job of directing those students at Coastal Carolina University, the theater department, and just bringing the words to life. And, so it really gave a wonderful taste of what you're going to expect in the spring, when we have the full production with all the bells and whistles. You'll remember that there was quite a bit of music in the play. And so expect that there will be even more music, because that's a really great way of getting to our culture, right?
Absolutely.
It's such an important part of our culture. It's what has brought us to this point. in our lives as African Americans. And so that's one of the things I'm working on now as I continue to develop and revise what I learned from the reading, in terms of feedback, really going deeper into and making it musical. And so not a musical, but a play with music. In terms of how you described what the play is about, for people who might not know, it does take place in Atlantic Beach. It does take place over 2 time periods, one in 1954, summer of 1954, and summer of present. And the reason for that is because, first of all, Atlantic Beach has such a deep, rich history. It's you could write 100 plays on this place, honestly. And I wanted to make sure that I honored the past of the Black Pearl Atlantic Beach, that you got to see a snapshot of the life of the people who lived there before. And so I chose 1954, and not to give too much away, but because that was right before Hurricane Hazel. It was like there was a hurricane.
Yeah.
So yeah. So for those of you who, if you do a little bit of history about Atlantic Beach, you can learn about there were many markers of what changed it over time. And that was one of the moments of when it was that hurricane. And so but I also wanted to show Black joy. So one of the things that one of my goals in having the play, the first half, act 1 basically is in 1954, is that, there was segregation. And as many of the residents explained to me, they would say it was hard segregation, right? I was like, this is some serious segregation. They called it hard segregation. And I didn't want to lose that, because I think that's such an important part of our experience in this country as a people. However, what's the real beauty for me is that even amid segregation and Jim Crow, we loved, we laughed, and we had joy. We had families, we thrived. And so that's kind of what Act 1 is about. And throughout the whole thing, as you'll remember, it's a love story from beginning to end. I mean, when you were reading the synopsis, love is at the center. Yeah, and that was very important to me, because I don't think we see Black folks loving enough on stage and screen. I want to see us more seeing ourselves, because we have a lot of love. I grew up in a very with love. So many of us grew up with so much love culturally, but I think sometimes in media, and those of us who have a voice, sometimes we don't focus on the love. Not to say that you can't focus on other things, but I think that centering Black love in a real way is revolutionary and important. And so that's why even in the second act, when we get into present day Atlantic Beach and some of the things that are going on in terms of, you talked about spatial justice and gentrification and progress, and some of the challenges that are being presented when we own land and somebody realizes it's valuable and therefore they want to take that land. Right?
That's right.
And it's complicated, but that's why I also centered a love story in there too, between a brother and a sister struggling, right? Struggling to hold on to the love of their family, struggling to hold on to having love within the, romantic love, but also familial love. I didn't want to leave love out. And so for me, it was really about legacy and those questions that you posed at the end. How do we hold on to our roots while embracing progress? I think that this is a universal question for all peoples who look like us, because we don't want to lose those roots, because that's what makes us who we are. And I am one of those people that I feel like you have to look back to understand what is coming forward. My dad used to always say, who was also from South Carolina, my father used to always say, there's nothing new under the sun. He felt like everything that is happening now, if you look back, you will understand. You will understand. And he was also a student of history. And that's what I grew up with in terms of understanding history, not just during Black History Month. And so I'm really excited about the project, because as I go further into it, I just love being able to amplify my people and to show our humanity. It's not a story of perfect people. They have flaws because every story, a good story, has people who are flawed, and there's conflict, and there's some things that happen in there that are uncomfortable. But I'm just really excited that people were able to receive that and in a positive way. And I'm hoping that it will continue to advance the conversation of what's going on at Atlantic Beach today.
So now, you mentioned about the premiere, or I read something about the premiere. Now, is there an estimated? I know there's an estimated time, which is the spring, that you want to
Yes.
have the thing on. Can you narrow it down to any particular week? Do you have a place all set out, or?
Yes. So it's happening as it stands now, and this is based on Stephen Hickenbotham, who is the head of the theater department at Coastal Carolina University, and the folks at Coastal Carolina University, because it's going to be world premiere with students from Coastal Carolina University. It's kind of around their time frame, but it's going to be, right now we're saying April 2025. So look forward to that. April 2025, there will be a full production, and it will run. It's going to run many, many weeks, actually. So everybody should be able to get to see it. I think it's going to run for a couple of, I want to say, I don't want to don't quote me. I think it's running for 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, but don't quote me. But it's got a real solid run. And the goal, I think.
This is at Coastal. At Coastal?
At Coastal.
At Coastal? Yeah.
Yes. At Coastal. Okay. And you've been there, so you know that they have wonderful facilities there. And it's going to be, it's really well funded, which is important, because then we can put on the play that we really want to put on, with all the things that we want to have. And so, that's what's going to happen. So we're going to be coming, Cezar, who happens to be my husband, in case anybody doesn't know that, we're a creative team, and he and I are going to be coming back to South Carolina in August, actually this August, to cast the play. So what's happening right now behind the scenes is that I took the script. In fact, the script is sitting here right next to me. I don't know if anybody cares about looking at a script. It's all funny. It's like, these are all my notes from what I learned. And it's a mess now. But I'm working on it diligently now to get it in the shape that I want it to be in for production. And so that's due in a couple of months. And then in August, Cezar and I will come back down to South Carolina, and we will work on casting for the play. And then we're going to go into rehearsals in the fall. I believe we're going in the fall. Yes, late fall. And then in the spring, we're going to come back again. You're going to see us again. You're going to get so sick of us. No. And we're going to be working on mounting it. And it's going to...
I'm looking at, I'm thinking so far ahead, I guess, that I'm looking at groups wanting to have fundraisers, and and your play could be the basis of all that.
That would be fantastic. You know what I mean? Yeah. If we have the reaction that we had even for the reading, I think it's going to be a really amazing thing. And what I would love to see, the community. I think Ms. Zenobia said it last week. The last time we were on, she said the community use it as a resource. Like, use it for whatever you can use it for. Because the thing about theater, it's not a movie, right? So it's not like it's going to be there forever. It's going to be a period of time where it's going to run, and then it'll be gone. So use it I would love to see it used as a resource for education, for entertainment, because it is entertainment, and for unity of the bringing the community together. It's just, I'm excited to see what you all will do around it. And Cezar and I want to make ourselves as available for all of that as we can.
Absolutely. You mentioned that your parents were from South Carolina, but you were actually from New York.
Yeah. So my dad, not my mom. My mom is actually from New York. She's like a native New Yorker. Okay. But my father has roots in Aiken, South Carolina. So my grandmother, Grace Wise Robinson, who I'm named after, my middle name is Grace. She was born and raised in Aiken. Her mother, Aura Graves, born and raised in South in Aiken. My father, I was just saying, I'm not quite sure when my father came to New York, but he was a kid. He was a child when he came, and he came with his mother. I think actually my grandmother came first to New York. My great grandmother came first to New York to kind of, as you know, people did at that time, to make a way to see what the job situation was and just kind of figure out what was going to go on. Then my grandmother and my father came, and my father has 5 siblings, and but I grew up with such strong influence of Gullah Geechee culture. But I was just saying, it's interesting. I don't think at the time, you're just in it. You're just living it, right? And so I remember my mom used to talk about my father being Gullah Geechee, and I don't think I knew what that even meant. And then he would explain to me, and I was just like, okay, And so the foods that we ate, so many of the things that we did and that were just a part of our household,
right,
were a part of it. And it was just so interesting to come down to South Carolina years later, and I was just saying to my husband, he knew, because he knew me for a long time. This was our diet. This is what we did. This is, even though we were in New York. And the interesting thing about it for me, and why it's part of it is a very personal project, is because every time I've come down to South Carolina because I've come down 3 times now in the last 2 years, and it's been for work, it has always been around the same time. It has always been around my dad's birthday. My father passed away in 2012. And I just can't help but think he's guiding me and moving me down to South Carolina. It's always, his birthday was just a couple of days ago. And so I just feel like, there's something in that. And he was always a real amazing supporter of me as a storyteller.
Yeah.
And he used to tell me that I had a beautiful mind. And I used to think that was so weird when he said that. But, I think about that when we went down to South Carolina last time, and I thought about him when we had that full house, and I just had to, I thank God. And then I talked to my dad, and I said, if he could see this, he would think this is incredible. It was just incredible. I'm still processing it, honestly. And I thank you all for the warm reception.
Well, you were fortunate enough when you, I guess, met Cezar to carry out these things, helped you to carry out what's in your mind.
Yeah.
And kudos to him. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here this evening
because he's on another project, and he's, but I want to say about Cezar, and I know that, people might think I'm being biased because we're married, but anybody who knows him knows this. He is an incredible artist. I mean, he is really, first of all, as you've met him, he's a great guy. First of all, he's very friendly and warm, but he's an incredible artist. And what he's been doing with the Black Pearl in terms of feedback, because now we're going through it page by page by page. It's a very painstaking process, but what he was able to do with those students is nothing short of miraculous. And I'm very proud of the work that he's been doing, and I'm very proud of the work that he's doing in the play. Just a little bit about how we came to work together. So it initially, and I think they mentioned this last time when they talked about it a little bit at Coastal. So I was at Coastal Carolina last year for a separate project. The students, you talked about this in the podcast the last time, so I'll just reiterate. Miss Zenobia was talking about it. Some of the Black students had gotten together and approached faculty at Coastal and said they would really like to bring Black artists to Coastal Carolina to do some work, and for diversity purposes and all of these things. And I think it was just so wonderful that Coastal Carolina listened to the students. And so then I got a call. They were looking for a Black woman writer to come down and share some work. And I came down last winter, it was a year ago, and I presented my play Freedom Summer. Actually, they presented my play. They wanted to use my play Freedom Summer, which is another kind of Black history historical piece. It's about the Freedom Summer project. It's a civil rights piece, social justice piece. And so they did the students read the piece, another reading, And they invited me down, and it was the same kind of thing. They had a reading, they had a discussion. It was wonderful. And it was just a great experience. Because I've worked with students for so long in my life, I so love working with students. I love working with young people, period. I think that we should listen to young people more in this
Absolutely.
world. They have answers to a lot of things, and
a lot of answers.
Exactly. So I came down, I worked with the students, and it was such a wonderful experience. And then I got a call months later from Stephen Higginbotham, the head of the theater department. He said, hey, we've never done this before, but we had such a great experience with you and with the students. And would you be willing to write an original piece just for for Coastal? And I was just, I was a little floored, because for a playwright, a commission is a really big honor. First of all, it's a very big deal to be commissioned to write something. Just period. That's something that most playwrights would love to have. So that was an honor, and I was excited about that. But then I was given the freedom to write whatever I wanted to write. I said, well, what do you want me to write? He says, you could write about anything. And I said, anything? He said, anything. He said, the only thing that I would ask is that there are roles for the students. And so I said, okay. And it was an interesting process. So that's when I was talking, but at this point, Cezar wasn't signed on to the project. And so fast forward, I think that Stephen reached out to me and said, hey, we're thinking we need a director for this, but I heard that your husband's a director. And I was like, oh yeah, he is. And he says, do you think he'd be interested? And I was like, well, you'd have to ask him separately. And so he asked Cezar. Cezar was interested, and the rest is history. And it was just, Cezar and I have only worked on one other really big project, and it was back in 2015. We worked on a piece called Dancing on Eggshells that was produced at the Billie Holiday Theater here in New York and Brooklyn. So it's been a long time. I mean, we've worked on little things together, but in terms of a big, full-length, 2-hour original piece that he would direct and we haven't done that in a while. And so it's actually coming at a really good time for us because our kids are older.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's helpful to us that we can really put our attention to it. I'm looking in the chat and somebody saying God is moving. And that's how I feel. I feel God is moving. God is moving. His hand is all over this project. And so, so we work really well together. It's very professional. He is a taskmaster. He is very serious, and he wants to get it right, and I want to get it right. And so
he certainly got that reading right.
Oh my goodness, he's detail oriented, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen with the full production. I think it's going to be beautiful.
Getting back to that reading, I had no inclination of wanting to see a reading. I want to see the real thing. I want to see the play. Right. So I was, I said, well, okay, I'll go. I mean, and sure enough, it beat my expectation, really, by far.
And you're not alone in that. Like most people are thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to sit and they're going to read a play.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I got to listen to them,
No, but you know what's interesting about that? So I live, as you know, I live in New York, and there's a lot. New York is like one of the theater capitals, right? And people can see all kinds of things, and most of the people I know, they go to Broadway constantly, and that But the thing about a reading, and I'm glad you brought that up, is that every single play you have ever seen had to start with a reading. Somebody had to sit down with scripts the way you saw it and just read it. Because as we have a saying that says, if it's not on the page, it's not on the stage. You've got to get those words right before you start putting in the costumes and the set and all of that. It's not a movie, right? It's very different than a movie. Those words have to be right. Not to say in a movie, the words don't have to be right. But so I think about what I love about it, and I think Cezar mentioned it. I don't know if I think he mentioned it at the reading of his intro, is it's really a privilege to be able to see something just at the beginning. Because now when you come and see the show, it's going to be so exciting because you're going to remember that you saw that reading and you're just going to be like, wow, like you get to see it evolve and grow.
Right.
You know, it's like a baby now, but you'll get to see it as an adult. And so, but I think that it's just so important for people to recognize, look, going to readings as a playwright, I go to many, many readings. I have lots of friends who are writers and they want you to come into reading. And sometimes readings are really exciting and sometimes they're not so exciting. It's hard, you know, especially this was 2 hours. Remember, it wasn't.
Yeah. That's what shocked me. That's what shocked me. I'm like, I've been sitting here too long.
I know when he said that, people were like 2 hours, but you know, that's why even more so, I'm just so excited that it was received the way it was. I didn't know what to expect. And I was very humbled. And, you know, for me, when I was writing it and researching, I got the pleasure of interviewing so many people who had history in Atlantic Beach. Right. And I just, so there's I must have talked to at least 12 people and over that time. And for me, I just wanted to make sure I was honoring their experience. I knew I couldn't do everything. Right. There are things about Atlantic Beach that are not in this piece. They're just not, because it's already 2 hours. But I will say this. I think I said this to all of you when I came to the reception. I absolutely 100% think that this something like this should be a series. Like Atlantic Beach is such an interesting place and so different in terms of its story. I think that I can really imagine it this way. And you know, I plan on writing that. I'm going to do that because I could see it. Couldn't you see it week to week to week? Just more things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's so lovely, but there's also a lot of drama. There's conflict. People are kind of arguing a little bit. Like there's enough in there that it could go on. And so I'm already.
You could extend the week. You could add more drama as things propel you to do that.
Exactly. And on top of it all, it's got wonderful characters and it's got Black history. And it's got what we were talking about before. It's history happening now in the making. We don't have to look. We can look back, but we can also what's going to happen forward. We don't know what's going to happen going forward with Atlantic Beach, right? But we know that there's a story there. And so I'm just excited to see what's going to happen. But I do hope it does serve as something that can be a vehicle for support for the community, whatever that means to you.
Yeah, I can't speak very well on a guest that we had maybe a couple of weeks before we had you all on last week. But it was a young lady. Her name was Miss Patrice, and Miss Patrice Reynolds. I don't think she'll mind me calling her name, but she came on our program to talk about a production that is going on currently at one of the shopping centers, on Myrtle Beach. Mm-hmm. And if anyone has any info on that, they can put it in the comments and we can talk about it. But it dawned on me that there must be some synergy there because you both I still don't want to say minority playwrights, right? I mean, we out there in the same field.
Yes.
And if there's some synergy there, I'd like for that to occur. So if somebody can send something through the comments, I mean, they certainly welcome that.
Yeah.
But getting back on this subject, if you mentioned a series, weekly series, when you're talking about, right? A weekly series. I think that's the greatest suggestion in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to sit back to what you were talking about, Miss Patrice. This, one of the things in my journey of writing this, I would always, I think that when people are writing things, they're always talking about it, right? Like you just kind of, you always, so when I wasn't finished with it, I would talk to my friends in New York. I say, oh, did you hear about this place? You ever hear about this place, Atlantic Beach? And rarely did anybody ever hear about it. Like it was just like, no, I don't know about that. And so that was my way of taking the temperature of how many people really know about this. Like, you know, is this, why don't people know about this? And I'm happy to hear that there's synergy and that other people are doing things around it, because I think there's room for all of it, right? I think there's a room for plays and movies and series and all the things, because it just has that much to it. And not just because it's interesting as a story. First of all, it's an ongoing story. I know that there's a documentary, four blocks. I know that there are people working on a documentary about it, or getting the funding for a documentary about it also. But it's the kind of thing where if you think about the landscape of what people watch in movies, on television, and what have you, right? There are certain places that people like to write about all the time. We see it all the time. And my feeling is that a place like Atlantic Beach is a place where that could be one of those places. You know what I mean? No matter what happens, the beauty for me is the people. That's something else I don't want to be remiss in mentioning. So much love when I met people, when I came there. I said to Cezar, we've said to each other when we left the reception, what's in the water with everybody here? Everybody is so warm, loving. It just was a welcoming place.
And they look, and they were rewarded with such a reading that captured their interest. And I can tell. I looked around in that audience, and I can tell. And their eyes were straight on the stage of the reading, and you know, just. Again, I'm still left in awe. So
somebody after the show, well, first of all, I'm like I said, I'm still processing. It was very emotional for me, because again, as I said at the top, when an artist, if you get an opportunity to write something that's about these are about their people and they're here, that's very different than you just make something up. That's very different. And I think the best thing that anybody could have said to me, well, people would show me pictures of their moms and their grandparents, and it's that meant everything to me. And so I think moving forward, as Ms. Zenobia said, I'm really looking forward to it being used for more people to do more things with it. You know what I mean? Like I know for myself, I know I'm going to continue to tell the story of Atlantic Beach, because it's the story. When we think about Black history, it's also a universal story. This story we see over and over again about land ownership and Black folks in the United States of America. This is not a story about a place that Black people wanted to just go to. This is about people who owned the place. That's the big thing I want people to get, because whenever I would talk to it about people, specifically on the East Coast, people in New York and Boston and such, we tend to go to a place called Martha's Vineyard, right? And in August, Martha's Vineyard is a place where the whole vineyard is Black for like a week or two. Like it's just Black people. And I remember saying it to someone. I was talking to someone about Atlantic Beach, and they said, "Oh, it's like Martha's Vineyard." And I said, "Well, no, because we don't own Martha's Vineyard. Martha's Vineyard, 2 weeks out of the year, Black people go, and it's wonderful. I mean, my family goes, and we vacation, and it's a safe space, right, where we can be safe and feel, have our families there. But we don't own it. It doesn't mean that people don't own property on Martha's Vineyard. They do." Black people do, and all of that. But in terms of what makes Atlantic Beach, and what I want people to just know, and I really get, is that the 4 blocks that is Atlantic Beach was purchased, right, in 1934. I think it was George Tyson, right? 1934.
George Tyson, yes.
Yes. And we inhabited it as, in terms of your governing and all of that, Black. That's very different than it's just a place we went to. And I just really want that to be something that really touches me, because I think about when I had taken a video when the day I was leaving, when I went to Atlantic Beach. I was on the beach, and I was thinking about, it's not a large part of we're talking about that think about during segregation that we could inhabit and have our own free life, right? This is not a lot of but so much happened in this place. And so I just think it's just so important. It's just such an important detail to remember. It's about ownership, and it's about the question you ask: how do you hold on to your roots while still progressing? And I think that they can happen. I do. I think they can happen. But from what the people that I interviewed on Atlantic Beach, the roots are so deep and go back so long. I just feel like that is the distinction between other places. Now, there are other places in the U.S. that has happened. One of the things I keep referencing is Bruce's Beach in Los Angeles, and how that was a place where it was like Black owned, and now there is not any scintilla of it's now Manhattan Beach. There are no Black folks on Manhattan Beach. I shouldn't say there aren't any. I'm sure there's some, but it's predominantly a white beach. And they have one plaque that says that we were there. In fact, the week that we came for the reading, and I was talking about this in the news that week, somebody had stolen the plaque from Bruce's Beach.
Wow.
And I think they've since replaced it. But that just goes to show you how powerful it is, this idea of us owning. And something that comes up in the play that is very near and dear to me is owning in the place where we were brought to as slaves. We were brought here enslaved. And the thought that people inhabited this place and made it a home, and it was theirs in the same ocean that we came across. I don't know. For me, that's very moving. When I think about that, I think about it just has so much power in that. And so, again, will we be able to get all of that in the play? I don't know, maybe. But, I will tell you, Cezar, when we talk about the play, and he's kind of, because he's the director, he's thinking about design and all of that. Yeah. He's going to try to get all of that in.
Yeah. And those things come. That's why I said that if you decide to go with a series, which I'm, hopefully it can
it's
happen.
A secret, Mr. McQueen. You can't tell anybody. We can't tell anybody. Nobody tell, because I want to be the one to do it, and somebody might hear and decide.
Okay, all right.
As long as it gets done.
I said, if Cezar is listening, he probably wants me to shut up with that too, right?
No, and it's funny because when we went down there, we said, "Oh my goodness, like this is." I can just see it. I can see it in my head. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. First, we're gonna do the play, right? We're gonna keep the play. That's the focus. But my ear is in tune to what's the next for creatively for this, because I don't know. I just it's speaking to me.
Yeah, I've seen that. Well, I don't know if that's true. How long at some campus? I think it was some place in Pennsylvania where it seemed like they had a series, one play, and it continued week after week, and it led up to some kind of climax. Okay, yes. But that's what kept people coming back and forth.
Well, what's interesting that you say that, because August Wilson wrote all of his plays about the same people in the same place, Pittsburgh, because that's where he was from. He wrote all his plays about different pockets of the same community. And so that's actually what you're saying is not actually outlandish idea, that you have this one community and then you have so many plays, because there are so many stories at Atlantic Beach. Even the story of just Bike Week. I always say Bike Week can be its own series.
That could be a series itself.
That's by itself. That by itself, Bike Week is its own thing. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, this is a 2-hour play, and this is what's very humbling. It's 2 hours, and I want it to be the most entertaining and enjoyable 2 hours that it could be. But I really have to just keep coming back to, it is just 2 hours, and Atlantic Beach is vast. It's vast.
It is. But who's going to benefit immensely if it were a series? The students at Coastal. Because you just keep not repeating, but continuing doing almost the same thing this week, I mean, that's a lot of experience. You got to look at that. Okay.
Well, were you there? I don't know which show you were at, but there was one of the shows, the talkbacks. They were asking the students if they knew what they knew about Atlantic Beach, and when they were very honest about saying they had never heard of Atlantic Beach. And these are students who grew up in Myrtle Beach.
Right.
I mean, they're from South Carolina, but they're from Myrtle Beach, and which is, I didn't realize until I actually saw how close this is like right there. So one of the other blessings of this whole thing is that it's been an education for the students, not just as actors and artists, but also as human beings.
Right.
And it started such a wonderful conversation, because then they were like, how did I not know? And then they can ask themselves questions like, how come you didn't know? How come you didn't know? And now that they know, they know. I think somebody, I think it was Mr. Skeeter was at one of the shows, and he just said they should come down. You should come to Atlantic Beach, just come and see. And I just love that, again, it's another way of being of service, because we live in a I was saying to the students the next day after the first reading, and we were talking about whether they knew about Atlantic Beach. And I said, isn't it interesting that we live in a society with so much technology where we can just pick up a phone and just Google anything, but there's certain things we know nothing about. Like, you could pick up your phone and find out about what's going on overseas, but you don't know what's going on 20 minutes from you. I find that fascinating. And so we that was a really great conversation that we had about information and just even having information about your surroundings. And so one of the things that came out of those conversations was that, and it wasn't me who said it, one of the students, they're brilliant, wonderful students. I miss them immensely. That was a wonderful week working with them. That's the only thing about working with young people. Then you miss them. And you have to. But one of the students said, she said, that's why we have to look up from our phone. That's why we have to look up. We have to go out in the world outside of our computer and everything, because you have to see the things around you too, and so I thought that was just a really great point. And so I'm hopeful about I'm hopeful about the story and about the community, because just in that little weekend, you have people who had never been there who are going to now know about it. And so I'm very interested to see what will happen as we shine more of a light on this place. And I hope it's a positive experience for you all. I really do. That's my prayer.
What about having the real Atlantic Beach historian is the gentleman that you just named, Mr. Skeeters, okay? He's 88 years old, and I think he's the oldest one on Atlantic Beach, and I mean that owns still own land there and have a place. It'd be compelling if you integrated his knowledge into one of your plays or into that play in some kind of way, or even mention his name, in some kind of way. I think it goes a long way to goodwill.
Yeah. He was really integral. I remember I was talking to him, I was in Los Angeles visiting, and I was talking to him over the phone, and we had wonderful conversation. And you're right. He knows, he's like he's the historian. He knows everything about it.
Yeah.
And I was so moved by, he told me, he gave me facts, but he also gave me his perspective on things. And I was so honored to meet him. I mean, I will tell you, when I saw Mr. Skeeter walk into the show, I thought, okay, if Mr. Skeeter gives me his approval, I feel good. I saw him, absolutely. I walked up to him and I said, what do you think, Mr. Skeeter? And he gave me his okay, his thumbs up. And I just, because he knows, right? He knows, and it means so much to him. And I thought that, to me, I'll be honest. When he said that, I said a little to myself. I said, thank you, Lord. I said, thank you, Jesus.
You have a wealth of knowledge. It's that wealth.
I was so happy. Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, there were so many people that I spoke to, and everybody had a little piece. And I did take a little piece of everything somebody said. You know what's interesting about that? Whenever I've written anything where people have given me information that's real information and I put it in a play, it's an odd thing. People don't recognize themselves in the play. I don't know why. Yeah, you think they would. I mean, if you say their name, they will, but generally I don't say their name. But I don't know if it's because they're in the story and they can't find themselves in the story, but it happens every time. I mean, I have had people come to a play of mine and say, "Oh my goodness, how did you think of that?" And I'm just laughing to myself because you told me that, but they don't remember, or they don't remember that was something. I will give everybody advice who's watching. If you don't want your life to be on a stage or screen, do not tell your friends who write anything because they're always going to use a part of it. They can't help it. Don't tell me anything you don't want. I won't use your name, but I'm telling you, if you tell me something, a story, it's going to wind up in something that I write.
Well, that's so good. And that's just, I'm about to use the word capitalism, but
Well, no, it's not even. It's just because human experience is so interesting, and people will tell you things, and you'll go, "Huh, that's an interesting story. That's an interesting thing." I mean, I'm not going to give it away now, but there are certain we'll see what it looks like when it goes on stage. But there are some details in this play that people, I don't know if people recognize. They were little pearls that they told me about, like their experience. And I don't know if I talked to them, they never said anything about it. So I don't think people recognize how you can integrate people's human experience into a story and make it a new story. Maybe it's because it's a new story. They don't recognize it.
Right.
But that was really important to me because then people, they don't know why they feel connected to the story. Part of the reason why you feel connected to the story is because it's familiar. Maybe it's something your grandmother said to you and you shared with me or whatever it is, and you don't recognize it because obviously I've put it in there and I've made it my own, and but it's there. And but as I said in the beginning, the universal piece in the story is love. We can all relate to love.
That was centered around you can feel that in there.
Yes.
Look, Cynthia, we've got about 6 minutes, no minutes at this time. So it's been such a joy. That's why this is kind of like an encore from last week.
Yes.
From last week. But we're starting to appreciate you coming out and letting us know. And look, you got to keep us abreast of
course,
the production, and up into said April of 2025.
Absolutely.
What we look forward to, right?
Absolutely.
We out here in the normal people, I would say, for lack of a better word. I mean, our input might make you want to add some more drama into it, and
absolutely,
revise along the way. So
that's true. That's how it gets done. So let's keep going. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about it. It helps me to talk about it. It reminds me, it gets me excited, because when I'm just writing by myself, sometimes it can feel like a little lonely, but when I get to talk to people about it, that's really very energizing. So I thank you so much.
Cynthia, and we've got a, you haven't met Miss McIver, but we've got she's developed a calendar for events that are occurring. And one of the things, this is, you can listen to this, but we're targeting our viewers also. That on February, what's the day? Today's the 13th. So the 15th, she has the Spirit of Sankova spoken word workshop with Jessica Moore. It's at the International African American Museum in Charleston. And on February 16th, From Dream to Reality, an evening with poetry and music, Jessica Moore again, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Also at the African American Museum. This is in Charleston, International African American Museum. On February 17th, Saturday, Black Women and Their Role in the Civil War webinar from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. And that's a Zoom. Okay. And the 21st, which is next Wednesday, they got Food and Faith Beyond the Walls with a Jewish rabbi, Mr. Tamar Manisha. And he's going to be at Charity Mission Baptist Church from 6:30 to 8 p.m. On the 24th, we got African American in World War I and World War II webinars, 1 to 3 p.m. All that's on the Zoom. So there are others after that, but we'll stop for that right now.
Okay.
But I don't know if you've heard, Cynthia, about the they call it a evening side chat, a beach side chat. This is put on by the neighborhood services of Myrtle Beach, and it's usually coordinated by Miss Goins, Miss Mary Goins, and she heads that department over there. So on the 18th, they're having a beachside chat. This is where it's a park that's at 16th and Kings Highway. Have you visited, by the way, Big Mike's?
Of course.
Oh, okay.
That was my first stop.
Okay.
I had rice and I had fried fish and I had rice with gravy on it, like my daddy used to make. And I said, I was suspicious. I said, I'm gonna stop. Big Mike's was my first stop. And I said, let me see how they do it.
Yeah, no, don't even talk about it anymore. Get hungry.
I was
so right down the street from that. Right down the street from that is the park where it's a park. I'm sure you've seen it if you've been to Big Mike's. Yeah. And it's they usually have an annual beachside chat and headed by Miss Mary Coins, and they go to discuss racial harassment. I don't know if you've known, but there was a cross burning incident that occurred in Horry County here recently, and so they're going to talk about that. It's a well-diverse kind of a ensemble. Okay, so we've got the cue that we got to go right now. So look, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, we'll be talking from time to time. Just you can you're in the magazine and see them, and we're certainly looking forward to that. Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're certainly welcome.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you for watching the World Community Magazine's Hour of Power Live on Facebook with your host Edward McQueen and April Garner.